We are now ready to go on our webinar, and I'm Gary Schnitke.
And I'm Laura Gentry.
And Laura is with the Illinois Corn Growers Association and PCM, and the Director of Water Quality for Illinois Corn Growers. I'm a professor in the Agricultural Economics Department. We're going to talk about tillage, nitrogen use, and cover crop impacts on corn and soybean returns. Our outline for today is first talk about what is PCM, Precision Conservation Management. That is where we're getting our data from to do this little exercise today, and we've been at this now for several years. We're going to talk about number 2, the data collection and reports from PCM for the farmers, and then we're going to talk about 3 things. What we're seeing from that data, nitrogen, and what we find is that MRTN rates have the highest returns, tillage and profitability. Modest levels of tillage have the most profitable results, and then talk about some lessons for cover crops from our new adopters. We do have a poll for you right now, so we're going to launch this poll. And again, where we're getting the data from is Precision Conservation Management. So we're going to describe that process a bit. If you're a farmer in East Central Illinois, you could enroll in PCM. And there we'll be expanding, right, Laura?
Yes, we are. We're growing.
So where will you be going?
Excited. Well, we're going to see where we are here in just a few minutes. We're going to put up a slide of all the counties where we are, but we're also growing into southwestern Illinois, hopefully towards the end of this year. We're really excited.
That will be good. So those producers in southwestern Illinois will no longer have to listen to East Central Illinois results, which they don't like.
They don't like.
So we are working on that. Our poll results are 23% are not aware, 49% have heard about it, and 8 and 20% have study results, and 20 are very familiar with it. So Laura, take it away.
All right. Thanks, Gary. And good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us on the webinar. So what is precision conservation management? So, well, first and foremost, precision conservation management is a farmer service program. It was created by farmers. It was created for farmers. And we have technical specialists. We call them our precision conservation specialists across Illinois and Western Kentucky to help our PCM farmers to understand the costs and the benefits of adopting and of scaling on their farm new conservation practices. And it's really looking at what it's going to do in terms of its environmental impact, but we also do a really great job, thanks to Dr. Schnitke, of looking at how these practices impact our cooperators' bottom lines and what it means really for their unique farming operation. So first of all, we are a farmer service program, and we are adopting these conservation practices and helping farmers to adopt conservation practices. We started out looking at water quality concerns. This began in response to the water quality issues that we have seen across the country. We're going to talk about that in just a second. And we want to demonstrate that farmers in Illinois and across the Midwest are able to address our water quality issues ourselves, do it without agricultural regulation. We think that we can do it more effectively and more efficiently by making good decisions on our own. And then we also want, in this new world of ecosystem service markets and opportunities and climate initiatives and corporate responsibility, there is gain to be had from adopting these conservation outcomes. And we want farmers to be able to claim those because we're the ones who are accepting the risk and accepting the financial burdens a lot of times of adopting these practices. We want to be sure that farmers are positioned to benefit from the good work that we are doing. So first and foremost, we're a farmer service program. We work for farmers. We are a program created by farmers. Secondly, though, we're also a really unique, one-of-a-kind educational platform for our non-PCM farmers, because for us to make the type of water quality changes that we need to make across the country and resulting in changes at the national level in the Gulf of Mexico, we have to move the needle in a big way. We need to have results that all of our farmers in Illinois and Kentucky and across the Midwest can apply to their own farms. And that's a really unique part of the Precision Conservation Management platform. So we can take our aggregated, anonymized PCM database and we can help all the farmers across the Midwest to make responsible, financially informed conservation decisions for their farm. So this is the Illinois Nutrient Loss Reduction Strategy. The one on the far left there is the original document. It was released in July of 2015, and we've had updates every other year since then. And this was a document that was led by Illinois EPA and Illinois Department of Agriculture, but was very much a stakeholder effort in Illinois. And we were a part of it, Illinois corn growers, as were most of the farming organizations in Illinois. And the end goal of this is to address water quality issues that are related to the growing hypoxic zone in the Gulf of Mexico. And its goals of this document, as it was being developed, working with the University of Illinois scientists and also others, was to demonstrate how point and non-point nutrient losses from Illinois river systems can be reduced, with a goal of, as you see there at the bottom, a final goal of a 45% reduction in total nitrogen and total phosphorus by 2035. That really was what initiated the Precision Conservation Management Program. However, over time, as we started to grow our partnership, we were being contacted more and more by groups that were related to the agricultural supply chain, groups who had made these different corporate responsibility, climate change, sustainability commitments. And they'd made those commitments as a result of their stakeholders and their customers demanding them. And they wanted to work directly with farmers. And we'll be showing some examples of that here briefly. And it was interesting because what we're finding is that this is a really difficult time for anyone who isn't aware for farmers. The financial outlook today is the worst it's been since the 1980s financial farm crisis. And so we created PCM with this understanding that U.S. agriculture, we need financial wins as much as we need environmental wins. And we're in this really critical moment where every U.S. farmer's really trying to reduce their risks and reduce their excess inputs, their excess labor costs. At the same time, the supply chain, and in fact, all of society is telling farmers to do more, to accept more risks, and to do more to address water quality, and do more to address climate change. And so we created Precision Conservation Management to work to a farmer's financial interests while also working to the benefit of our environmental interests. So a little bit of stats about the Precision Conservation Management Program. We serve 16 Illinois counties. You can see them highlighted there. And we're moving over towards the western part of the state, hopefully by the end of this year. So we're excited about that. We're also in 10 western Kentucky counties. In Illinois right now, we serve about 330 farmers, a little more than 300,000 acres. And we have 5 years of data in our program. Our precision conservation specialists are shown here. And as we mentioned, we have got these 4 counties or 4 regions that comprise our 16 counties in Illinois. And then there in the bottom right-hand corner, you see Chris Stewart, and he is our one-man shop for the 10 counties in Kentucky. So we have these precision conservation specialists that serve our farmers directly, working with them one-on-one, delivering reports to them, showing them how conservation practice adoption and scaling practices to more acres can affect their financial bottom line. And we have to also mention that this was all started with the great help of Natural Resource Conservation Service awarding Illinois corn growers a Regional Conservation Partnership Program award in 2015. So NRCS has really been instrumental in supporting the PCM effort. We also work really closely with our county soil and water conservation districts in those 16 counties. They also have been instrumental in helping the PCM program to really succeed. In fact, all of our specialists are employees of the soil and water conservation districts, and then Illinois corn growers reimburses back to them. And of course, we mentioned that this is a partnership effort. We now have over 30 partners representing all parts of the supply chain. We have foundations, we have conservation efforts, we have technical tech companies that are working with us to all extend the farmer's ability to adopt conservation practices in a less risky way. So this represents all of the farmers, farmer organizations and conservation groups, tech companies, ag input groups that are working with the precision conservation management effort today. So what do we do the next step of actually collecting data and working directly with our farmers? So it couldn't happen if we didn't have a really excellent data collection system. And that is one that our lead IT partner On has worked with us, and that is the Heartland Science and Technology Group. And they not only just secure PCM data, and they really do secure the PCM data. That's an interest of a lot of our farmers, being sure that their data is secure, that we only share it in a way that is going to directly benefit all farmers without directly harming any of them individually. So Heartland is, of course, very confident in the way that they handle farmer data, the way that we encrypt the data, secure the data, put the data in our different login controlled platform, but also the way that our data is organized and constructed. And we've worked closely with Heartland Science and Technology Group since the program began, since PCM began. And it's created a data collection platform that really works the way that farmers work. So we have these 4 layers within PCM data collection. We start out with fields, like you see there on the right. It's very easy to put fields into the PCM program. The precision conservation specialist will come out to your house or your farm and your office and start putting in your fields. That's really easy. That's usually a pretty quick part of it, because you just click, click, click to get the field boundaries in there. If we need to make some edits to that, if you've split a field or need to take an area out, we can do that easily enough too. Then we apply a crop to the field. Then we apply what we call a system. Most of our systems are, well, first of all, our crops are corn, soybean, and wheat. Those are the crops that we serve right now. And then the systems that we look at, most of them are conventional field corn, field soybean type of systems. But we do also serve non-GMO. We serve seed corn and seed bean production systems, and we are increasingly enrolling farmers who are either certified organic or transitioning into organic programs. And then the last layer is what we call our programs. And the program is really the meat and potatoes of our data collection. That's where every pass across the field is collected. That includes all of the inputs, the rates, and the instrument that's being used there. So this is how we generate a lot of the costs that Dr. Schnittke is going to talk about next. Now, we have this great data set. We have over 6,000 fields across central Illinois now. How do we use all this data to help farmers and to help others who want to understand how management decisions that farmers are making compare with those of other farmers who are using different types of practices? How do they compare from a financial perspective? How do they compare from an environmental impact perspective? And how do we do it in a way that really does protect every farmer's individual information? In PCM, we allow farmers to make what we think of as meaningful comparisons by using these practice standards. So the practice standards that we support are for tillage, cover crops, and nutrient management. And one example of what this data looks like is right here. And this is just an example. It's showing nitrogen management decisions on corn on high SPR, that's soil productivity rating soils. So these are our, most of the soils in the PCM program right now, over 60% of them are in the high SPR range, meaning their rating is over 136. So this is what it looks like, and really the takeaway from this, and this, by the way, is also in the Prairie Farmer booklet that just hit all the mailboxes about 2 weeks ago. So the Prairie Farmer, there was an insert in the June edition that shows a lot of this information that we're showing you right now. So this particular table was in there, and what it's demonstrating is that farmers who are putting more than 40% of their nitrogen on in the fall, they're applying more nitrogen, and they're paying greater costs for things like stabilizer, and the net outcome of that is that their operator and land return is lower than farmers who are applying more of it in season. So you can see there that bottom line, and the green there is showing that the farmer return of $235 an acre for high SPR corn ground for farmers who are applying most of their nitrogen in the fall, compared to these other, especially mostly pre-plant, which looks like it is the most profitable system for farmers in the counties we're working in Illinois on those high SPR fields. And then lastly, what do we do outside of those farmers? This is how that we're working with directly in PCM. This is how we're doing it. We're reaching out across the country to let people know what we're finding in PCM. And this is how our farmers are really contributing at a national scale to help all of us make better decisions to improve water quality and greenhouse gas emissions, climate change issues, and soil health. We are packaging all this information up into different size bites. So you can access it on the farmdoc website. Like you can see a couple of the articles we've published here with Dr. Schnittke. And then, as I mentioned, the articles that just came out in booklets that just came out in the Prairie Farmer. So with that, I think that's all I was going to talk about for now on the program itself in the background. So turn it over to our results man, Dr. Schnittke.
All right. Thank you, Laura. And again, what we're going to do now is throw some of the results from PCM. I'm going to go back here to this table a bit and just describe the economics that we do. And we do this for each field in the system. And here's what you're seeing is a summary of those across benchmarks, in this case, a nitrogen benchmark. But for each field, for every year from 2016 through 2019, for which the field is organized, we give them a gross revenue, which is based on, which would be based on, there we go. Our gross revenue here, that's at $789 for over 49%. 40% fall application would be based on the yield times the price during that year. We would also give direct cost, and our direct cost would be fertilizer, seed, chemicals, drying, storage, and crop insurance. We would also list power cost, which is associated with each trip across the field, overhead cost, and then we would come up with total non-line cost and an operator and land return. And you're going to see that return talked about. And again, as Laura mentioned, we're seeing for this case, over 40% applied. Our operator and land return, and this was for 2015 through 2019, was $235 per acre. That compares to our higher returns associated with more application, the mostly pre-plant, mostly side dress. They had higher returns in those years. And we'll talk about a little bit about the reasons why. Again, we're going to do some pushing of the data, do some practice comparisons, profitability analysis, and probably just as important, we're going to talk about greenhouse gas emissions, and we're in particular going to talk about that when we get to cover crops. So we're going to start here with we got a poll for you to do. Our first results are going to deal with what do you expect nitrogen to look like, application rates to look like 5 years from now. Do you expect them to go up, to go down, decrease, or remain the same? So let's, as we're going through this, again, our first results here are going to be related to nitrogen and what we see with nitrogen rates as far as profitability across these fields. And if you haven't voted yet, please do so. And we got 68% of you voted right now. We have 142 people on the line. So if you would look at that and tell us what you think. Again, our first results here are going to be related to nitrogen application rates. What you all expect is 50% of you expect them to decline, 34% of them to remain the same. So 84% of you don't believe they're going to go up, 13% believe they're going up, and 3% said, I don't know. All right, so first off, we're going to talk about nitrogen application rates. And what we find as we look through data from 2015 through 2018 is that when we look at this data, what we find is that our highest returns, and we're judging those returns by operator and farmland returns. So that would not only include the yield differences across these observations, but also the nitrogen applied, as well as the trip passes that differ across the fields. We find that the MRTN rates have the highest return for the farms that we see enrolled in PCM. Now, those nitrogen recommendations are the maximum return to nitrogen rates, our University of Illinois recommendations for 2019. Those recommendations in the central region of the state were 174 pounds of actual N per acre. If we applied anhydrous ammonia, 28% for nitrogen solution, the difference there would be related to the cost differences of anhydrous ammonia to nitrogen solution. You can see more about that in our March 18th, 2019 FarmDoc Daily article. but those MRTNs are available in the corn nitrogen rate calculator, which is available on the web, and that would include recommendations for the Minnesota through Ohio Midwest states. If we look at what nitrogen application rates were on PCM fields, and again, this would be on a PCM field, and this would be, these nitrogen rates are on a per acre basis. So this is actual pounds of N on a per acre basis. And you can see then the yield that resulted from those. We had actual pounds of N applied ranging from 100 to just under 300. And you can see there what the yields were associated with those. There are pretty much a cloud associated with that. There might be a slight upward trend, but you can see there's a lot of variability, as you would expect, on fields with different rates of nitrogen and the resulting yield. And again, this is from 2015 through 2019. We broke those yields and application rates out by year. Here you can see in the upper left-hand corner, 2016, 2017 is on the upper right corner, 2018 lower left, and 2019 lower right. Again, you can see, and again, you can see across the years differences in yields that were based on those years. 2019, we had lower yields than some of the other years that we had out there. Again, in each one of those years, we did see quite a range of application rates across these fields. And again, the observation that we're looking at is a field. We know every field pass that was made on those fields, as well as the yield associated with those fields. And this just shows the application or nitrogen rates and then application or yields associated with those. We could do the same thing based on nitrogen benchmark, and we would see it's roughly the same sort of cloud. What we did here is we divided field observations into categories, and this is a paper that's was written by Sarah Sellers, and then it asked, do Illinois farmers follow university-based nitrogen recommendations? If you could give us a call, we will send it to you. It's a select paper submitted to the AAEA. But here we divided out the field observations, and you'll see the red category there, MRTN. That would be 20 pounds plus or minus from the MRTN. So if you know what the MRTN is, go up 20, go down 20. Below MRTN would be those that are below that level, and then we divided up in those above it into 4 categories. 1 to 20 pounds above the MRTN category, 21 to 40 pounds above the MRTN, 41 to 60 pounds above, and then 60 pounds above. If we look at the observations across all years, 5% were below MRTN, 28% hit the MRTN or within plus or minus 20 pounds, 34% were 1 to 20 pounds above, 22% were 21 to 40 pounds above, and then 8 and 3 were in the above 3 and above 4 categories respectively. That varied by year, and we just put 2 years up here as an example. You can see that the MRTN was 25% of the observations in 2016, and in 2019 it was 38%. So if anything, we're seeing farmers reduce nitrogen applications, at least in our sample. Having said that, we've been adding farms across the sample as well, so it's not a constant number of farms. So Laura got that about right. We've been adding quite a bit. There's more observations in later years.
Oh yes, yes. 2016 would have far fewer than 2019 as far as observations, and from different regions too. So
we're just taking all of those regions and putting those together. And again, the next several slides, we're going to look at yields and then returns by those categories. So first off, start with yields. And if we look at all years, and you'll see the MRTN there in the middle, if we look at those farms that applied, or fields below MRTN, they had a 16 bushel less yield than at the MRTN rates. that little star there indicates that it's statistically significant. So it's statistically significant below MRTN. This is all years. And this is, by the way, controlling for soil productivity, and in this case, years as well. So the above one had -1. Above 2 had 6 bushels higher. Above 3, so this would be, above 2 would be 21 to 40 pounds above, 6 bushels higher. That was statistically significant. Above 3 was 7 bushels higher, and above 4 was 18 bushels higher. And all of those were statistically significant. And statistically significant in this case means that they had higher yields than the MRTN category. However, if you look at this by year, it varies by year. 2016, if you go back to that year, 2016, those above 2 and above 3 categories had higher yields, statistically different. 44, the above 4 category had 44 bushels higher, but a lot of variability, so it wasn't statistically significant. So even though it's bigger, it wasn't statistically significant. 2017, the above 1 and above 2 had lower yields than MRTN, and so we can see different results for nitrogen by year. 2018, above 2, above 3, and above 4 had statistically higher yields. And 2019 also statistically higher yields, 7 and 9 bushels. Here's the key. This is for yield. Remember, yield. So in some cases, those above MRTN categories did have higher yields. Now we're going to look at it on a return basis. And so this would be yield. Now we're going to look at it from a return basis. And remember, we're looking at this at an operator and land return. So there are differences. The differences would be higher yields would have higher returns, obviously. As we go from above 1, above 2, above 3, above 4, we're increasing the amount of nitrogen applied, so that is going to increase the cost. And field passes will also matter in this application as well. So, but here, if you're looking at all years, you're looking at the MRTN category. The above 1, above 2, above 3, and above 4 had lower returns than the MRTN, and those lower returns were lower by, you can see there, $20 per acre, $21 per acre, $31 per acre, and $31. 1, 2, 3, 4. All of those are statistically significant. So while we did have some cases where we did have higher yields, the cost associated with getting those higher yields in terms of nitrogen and perhaps field passes were cause those to have lower returns. Do that by year. 2016, you can see that we did have higher returns. None of them were statistically significant. And again, that's at a 5% level, a lot of variability there. 2017, they were statistically lower. 2018, statistically lower. And again, we're looking at the higher above MRTN. The above 2 was not statistically different that year. And above in 2019, all of them, except at the MRTN level, had statistically lower returns. We've looked at this again, going back, we're looking at this also with tillage, nitrogen benchmark, or how they were applied. Frankly, this is the biggest result, though. This is the most clear result. MRTNs, they've faced a lot of criticism, I guess, but from our results, they would be the highest returning categories.
Our data shows it every year.
So, all right, so here's our summary nitrogen application at MRTN rates. And again, those would be generally below 200 pounds of N, and statistically higher returns than higher application rates. And for 2021, and now we're going forward, 2021, we're looking probably at a lower return level, maybe looking at lowering those rates, particularly if we're above MRTN, would have positive return implications. as well as I think that Laura should have water quality results.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. This should have the rate itself, of course, is really important for water quality results. It's really important, as it turns out, for greenhouse gas emissions, too. It has some positive impacts there, and we'll see some of that information here at the end.
So just describe greenhouse gas. It's higher, or it goes down with lower rates because of the energy needed to produce
the nitrogen fertilizer. Producing anhydrous ammonia, it's produced with really high pressure and a lot of energy, and it's the energy cost of producing the nitrogen fertilizer that drives those the CO2 emissions levels way up for nitrogen application. So the more nitrogen applied, of course, the more energy it took to produce that nitrogen.
All right, so now let's move on to our next one, tillage and profitability. Corn and soybeans, we got we've also, and we're going to slice this data based on tillage. Here, we're going to start with corn returns. And what we did was divide out corn returns. And again, we got that yield. And if you go to the insert, you can see more information about those inserts, or the breakdown of these costs. We're going to keep this at a relatively high level. Our tillage benchmarks were no-till, strip-till. So strip-till is one pass through, building a strip. And if you go to FarmDoc Daily, there is an article on strip-till and the way East Central Illinois farmers apply strip-till varies tremendously across operations. So
good information about what way to do it the most profitably.
Yeah, and we see a lot of differences in the way strip-till has been applied, from putting all the nitrogen down in the fall to virtually none. So all of that has some implications. We're grouping that all together here today. One pass light, two pass light. So one pass light would be one tillage pass. So one pass through the field. And again, this would be mainly from soybeans to corn. Two pass lights, so that would be and a light pass would be not a deep tillage pass. Then we have two passes moderate, which would include something deeper than the two pass light, and 2+ pass systems. Laura,
anything more than two passes, whether it's a heavy piece of equipment or a light piece of equipment, gets lumped into the 2+ passes.
So what we consistently see across the years is these 1-pass light and 2-pass lights have a higher returns. One of the things that are noticeable is that when we go to the 2-pass moderate, 2+ pass systems, we see a reduction in returns. One of the reasons why that is we don't see higher yields with those 2+ moderate, 2+ pass systems, so that we're adding cost associated with the passes and not getting anything in return for that. Strip till has lower returns. Again, I would suggest in strip till just go to FarmDoc Daily, and it was written last year, and type in strip till, and you will come up with the article. And if we have time, I'll look for it and I'll give you the exact date. I see that question up there. We will get it for you. And no-till also had lower returns as well. We're doing more digging into those bottom two categories, but what we do see is more moderate sort of, moderate. We don't see a lot of return for 2+ moderate and 2+ pass systems in these tillage systems. Here's more detail. So if you go back to this slide, there's 229 here. You'll see 229 on the no-till. You'll see more detail on this. So you can look at those things and look in more detail. That's also in the insert that is in Prairie Farmer.
It is.
So look at that Prairie Farmer article and you'll get it. You should look at those things when we send them to you, right? Or something like that. Laura?
Yeah, we did another analysis where we just pulled out those 25% highest profitability fields for corn. We did it for high SPR and lower productivity soils. We did it for soybean. And for soybean high and low productivity soils. This information is all slowly getting uploaded onto the Illinois Corn PCM webpage too. So you can go to that webpage and pull out a lot of this information for the lower SPR soils if you're interested more in that, corn and soybean both. And that's www.ilcorn.org/PCM. So when we pulled out those top 25% most profitable fields for corn, high SPR fields, and we just looked at the tillage practices, and we just looked at what percentage of each of our tillage standard classes each one of those fell into. For corn, what we found was that the most common high profit tillage system was one pass light, as you can see there, 35%. Of the most profitable fields for using tillage, we're using that one pass light tillage class. And I'd also mention that before we added in the most recent data, strip till was a really profitable tillage class too. In fact, that's what prompted Gary to do the analysis on, and Sarah to do the analysis on the strip till.
2019 was a different year.
It was, and it didn't do any favors really for strip till or for the one pass light system as much as we've seen in other years. And we think that that could really just be the result of the fact that the fields that were well drained enough or missed a couple of those big rain events allowed farmers to get out and do a second tillage pass if that was their normal tillage pass system. Whereas if it were more poorly drained, the farmer just couldn't get out there and do that. And that set them up for a later planting date if it was a poorly drained field, set them up for poor early season conditions too. So it may have just been more the result of 2019 data that we added in, flooding our data set with some not entirely representative conditions.
We had a question, and we got two questions here that we'll answer right now. Is there a distribution of profitability for organic operations? And we have not done that analysis yet. We will do that in the future. We have limited organic.
Right. And it wasn't really until 2018 and 2019 that we had enough to begin looking at analysis. So we'd like to have another year at least of that.
Yeah, one other question was on our nitrogen rate charts with MRTN rate is the level 1. All right, so above 1 to 20 above. So let me give you a very specific example. Let's say our MRTN for 2019 was 170 bushels or pounds per acre. 170. We went 20 above it and 20 below it, so it would be 190. So the MRTN would include 190 and below it. Then above 1 would be from 191 to 210. Above 2 would be 211 to 230. And now I'm going to stop doing the math because I'm running out of. All right, so there
we had another good question. Someone asked, is this our total nitrogen rate, including any nitrogen contained in, say, MAP or DAP? And the answer is yes.
Yes, it includes the nitrogen that is in DAP or MAP. Any nitrogen source that is in there is included in those items. Here's our soybean returns by tillage benchmarks from 2016 through 2019. No-till, 1 pass light, 2 pass light. So these will be roughly the same definitions as before, 1 pass light. Again, remember in our situation, over 90% of the fields are corn going into soybeans. So almost all of these fields, almost all, are soybeans going, or corn going into soybeans. We see no-till, 1 pass light, 2 pass light, 2 pass moderate, and then 2 plus pass systems. Again, if you're looking at these tillage pass systems, we saw 1 pass light, 2 pass light, and 2 pass moderate to have higher returns, and the 2 plus pass systems having lower returns again. And we're again looking more into the no-till situation as we move forward. One of the things I would say about this is the 1 pass lights were more profitable until we put 2019.
That's true. That's true.
So 2019 was a year, and again these are for 2016 through 2019. So again, we're seeing those 2+ pass systems not having the yield advantage and return advantage as the 1 pass sort of systems. Here's Laura and
Right. Yeah. This is, and we should mention what we're showing here is all Illinois soil, Illinois fields, Illinois crops, Illinois soils. We're not showing the Kentucky data here. So just should mention that too. So we again pulled out those 25% most profitable soybean fields. We looked at our different tillage outcomes for each class. And what we're showing here is a breakdown again of the tillage classes: no till, 1 pass light, 2 pass light, 2 pass medium, 2+ passes, and the percent represented for each of those classes within our most profitable soybean production fields. And we also added in another piece to this. We looked at the direct costs. And so again, those direct costs include fertilizers, pesticides, your crop seed, cover crop seed if you're growing a cover crop, drying costs, storage, and crop insurance, all put into direct costs. And so this is, we think, really interesting. For one thing, it's really interesting about just the tillage itself. The top 25% most profitable fields were largely no-till fields for soybean production. And we have not seen no-till being all that productive when we pull the whole pool of soybean fields together in our PCM data set. But when we pull out those most profitable fields, we see that there are a lot of no-till soybean farmers out there who are among the most profitable soybean farmers in central Illinois. And again, also a very interesting part of this is that farmers who are able to keep their direct costs in that moderate range, not too low, not too high. It seems like the Goldilocks region is $125 to $163 for direct costs. Seems to be the most profitable also. So keeping direct costs seems to be important. You'll probably hear that again from Gary.
I mean, that's a refrain from agricultural economists the world over. So tillage, moderate tillage levels have higher returns than more tillage, and really when you begin to looking at those tillage decisions, it becomes critical when you begin replacing equipment, because when you keep equipment around, that's when you get a lot of the cost. So we have one more poll question. We're going into our cover crop results. And now we got a question. In 4 years, how many acres will be in cover crops in Illinois? We're going to give you some options here. Less than in 2020, about the same. I expect the crops to grow about 10 to 20%. And I expect cover crops to grow more than 20%. There's nothing scientific about this. We made it up last night. We were just curious about what you thought. And we thought you would be curious about what you thought as well. So 70% of you are voting. So keep voting here, and we'll show you the results in a minute. And we're going to give you our cover crop results right now. Here they are. What they say is that you expect less than, or most of you expect, 63% of you expect cover crops to grow 10 to 20%, and 13% of you expect them to grow more than that. So that'll give you a feel for what you expect. Now I gotta get all right. So cover crops. Here's our results from cover crops from 2016 to 2019. We so the left side is soybeans cover crops to soybeans, cover crops to corn. What we see is
Answer one.
sorry about that. The cover crops. So we have soybeans to corn, yield bushels per acre, non-line cost, and returns per acre. One of the things that you will see here is that our no cover crop had, well, first off, going into soybeans, yields were about the same. And if anything, 2019 was not particularly kind to cover crops. So cover crops up to 2019 was not particularly kind to cover crops. And what we saw here is that our no cover crop had a higher return than overwintering and winter terminal. Same thing in corn. Actually, winter terminal had a bit higher returns. I would note that overall, we had fewer fields in cover crops than in the other, and we've been adding those over time. And we added a lot in 2019, and probably not the year that you want to
Adding a lot.
looking at this. One thing I would say about most of our cover crop users is they're relatively new to the game,
Yes.
and a lot of
We targeted them. We received cost share to provide cover crop cost share to first-time cover crop users on first-time cover crop acres. So yes, that should be considered as you're looking at these results also.
So we have a question. Yield benefits of tillage and cover crops accumulate over time. Did you look at net returns comparisons depending on years of tillage or cover crop use? No, we haven't. And frankly, we won't have many years of cover crop use in our data set. So if you're looking at the accumulation effect, it will be a while before we see that. We would make the pitch, though, that cover crops is something that farmers need to experiment with, and because of some of the new opportunities that we see coming up. And Laura?
Yes, we have been partnering with a new initiative called the Ecosystem Services Market Consortium, and essentially they are a marketplace, and their mission is to advance ecosystem service markets that incentivize farmers and ranchers to improve soil health systems that benefit society. This is very much an initiative, a U.S. initiative that is working to build up a marketplace to support farmers for the good work that they are doing. It is being supported widely by the supply chain and by different kinds of foundations. And we think that it's just a really good organization that is looking to put farmers at the forefront of these ecosystem service markets, to be sure that we are the one that are pulling the cart, not that we're getting pulled behind by some less transparent types of work. And we really do want to support the work that they are doing. We want to be sure that farmers are well represented in any benefits that can accrue to us. So some work that they have shown is that there's a $14 billion industry out there to support cover crops, anything really that improves water quality, water health, water quality, water quantity, and greenhouse gas or carbon emissions reductions. So there's a big market out there for that, is what they are demonstrating, and we want to be sure that farmers are represented in it. We are currently launching a pilot with Ecosystem Services Market Consortium through the Precision Conservation Management effort. So if there's any PCM farmers tuned in right now and you're interested in being a part of this pilot, please contact your PCM specialist. We are working with other partnerships as well. We've mentioned some of the supply chain that they've come to us. One of our greatest partnerships with a corporation is represented by PepsiCo. PCM and Pepsi partnered over the past 2 years, and now the East Central region of our PCM program, which is Champaign, Douglas, Edgar, Ford, and Vermilion counties, are largely represented by Pepsi farmers and farmers who sell to the different into the Pepsi supply chain. And they, of course, have made a significant commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions across their supply chain, and they provided cost share. And so we are able to supply about almost 13,000 acres of cover crops as a result of the partnership that we have with PepsiCo, and they funded over 8,000 acres of those cover crops that we have, or they cost shared about 8,000 acres of that. And when you put that into terms of greenhouse gas emissions, which is something that's very important to Pepsi as well as other corporations, we found that we were able to reduce CO2 emissions by over 8,000 metric tons over those 2 years. And so that equates to taking almost 1,800 cars off of the road. So really proud of the work that we're doing with Pepsi. And they asked us to do some scenario analysis. And this is something that's really unique to the PCM program. We're really glad that we're able to work with them. We're also working with a tool called the Cool Farm tool that helps us to make these types of estimates. And we also partner that tool up with the field to market field print calculator to help us to draw some really strong conclusions about how we could be impacting climate change through the work that we're doing. And the bottom line of all this is that cover crops, without question, cover crops are the single best practice that we can be doing for greenhouse gas emissions reductions. Cover crops also very effective at reducing nitrate nitrogen losses, reducing phosphorus losses, building soil organic matter, increasing biological diversity of our soil, reducing soil erosion. So this is why cover crops are so pivotal to what we are doing. And yes, it does have, of course, financial implications. We are here to help to quantify what those are, to help groups like Pepsi and the rest of the corporate supply chain to understand that farmers need some help with these, and to also help to be sure that farmers are represented in these new ecosystem service markets, whether it's water quality, whether it's water quantity, or greenhouse gas emissions. We want to be sure that farmers are there and represented for the good work that we're doing. And when we found that when we are optimizing our system by pairing cover crops with no-till, and reducing the nitrogen rate to the MRTN, we were able to reduce greenhouse gas emissions per field by as much as 171%. That's really quite significant, and it just demonstrates how pivotal agriculture is for climate change issues and certainly around water quality issues.
So if you're looking at our summary here today, our MRTN is university recommendations do in fact appear to be the most profitable nitrogen application rates, and if we're above those, cutting back to those appear to be a profit or are a profit maximizing move. Appropriate tillage levels do appear to be a key to profitability, and perhaps have a potential returns in the future, particularly as we look at groups being willing to fund greenhouse gas and other emission reduction strategies. Yes. So that leads to the need to perhaps experiment more with cover crops now and make those work in our systems. We want to thank Illinois Corn Growers Association, and Laura is obviously an employee of the Illinois Corn Growers Association, and we particularly appreciate their partnership with the University of Illinois and the data that they provide for us. And thank you for joining us today. And if you have more questions, please submit them. One item to note here is that we've had a number of questions about the papers. We will make them available in the description of the YouTube video. So if you go down to the YouTube video after it's posted, which will be later today or maybe tomorrow, we'll give Jim till tomorrow, and we will put those on there. So just again, coming back, what are multiple trips, especially 3 trips across, only increase the operating cost by $3 per acre. So if you're looking at those operator and land returns, we had a question: if we had 3 trips and we saw operating cost increase by $3 per acre, we are taking into consideration all costs. So while the cost of those trips may have gone up, something else might have gone down on those farms. So if you're looking at those cost of those trips are definitely included in the cost totals, but something else might be going on in those costs. In your N analysis, do you differentiate between NH3 and UAN? And yes, we do. We do not report the results here, and we differentiate between UAN and anhydrous ammonia in several ways. The first is in the cost of the input itself. We account for the fact that solutions typically have higher cost, and we also account for the differences in application costs that exist between anhydrous ammonia, which are typically a bit higher than those for nitrogen solutions. Cover crops, here's a comment, perhaps more than a question. Cover crops are interested economically, but questionable economically. Every place we've looked and seen, first year use probably isn't going to be increase in profitability.
Seems so. Even if it doesn't have a impact on yields, obviously it's an expense.
Yeah, the best, if we're looking at establishing cover crops, the best thing, one of the pieces of advice an agronomist or an ag economist would give you, not an agronomist, would be to keep costs low. Cover crops obviously fit in better with no-till systems. So as we're moving into those no-till systems, those would be where we see cover crops fitting in better. Are you studying cover crops with micro and fungi use?
No.
No, we are not. We have seen N reduced to plus or minus 120 units per acre and per acre net returns increased by $30 with good soil health, cover crops, fungi, and strip till. Well, good. Is there a way? And yeah, we do see nitrogen reductions depending on where they're at. Reduce cost and increase returns.
Takes a little time, and we're starting to look at more of that systems approach that they're mentioning there now that we are getting a larger data set. That's just another thing that we can do more of and better moving forward.
Are you studying cover crop interaction with herbicide reductions? We have not done that yet, but we do have the data, and we do need to divide. We will be spending more time looking at cover crops and those that do it more profitable in the future. So keep looking for us as we move forward, where we have a lot of data, and we will be conducting more studies in the future. So you can look for our results on the Illinois Corn Growers site, FarmDoc Daily. We will be posting articles there, and as well as we will be doing webinars in the future. Laura, do you have anything else you want to say?
Well, we would encourage you, please, again, to check out our Illinois Corn webpage with PCM data that we're adding more and more analysis to all the time, www.ilcorn.org/PCM. Also, I didn't mention this, but anybody can go onto the Precision Conservation website and start an account. It's free, and you can go in there. Just go to precisionconservation.org and go up to the top there. I think it says Farmer Portal, and you'll be prompted to create a login. And then you can go in. You can enter fields. You can enter somebody else's field. You can go in and just play around on it and just see what happens when you grow a cover crop, when you add different nitrogen rates, when you grow a different type of crop, and you can make reports that way too. So that is something that you can do, and learn a little bit more about our program too. If you're interested in joining and you're in one of our 16 counties, you can go to precisionconservation.org to join. And also, if you are a PCM farmer and you're interested in participating in one of these marketplaces, we would encourage you to contact your PCM specialist, and there is money to work with in our pilot through our partners in that effort too. So take advantage of that.
And again, we have a couple questions on cover crops, and we will be looking more at cover crops in the future. We appreciate your time this morning, and we look forward to seeing you down the road. So see you in the future.